Welcome to episode 32 of the Midwest Angler Podcast. I'm Scott Sturman, and as most of you guys know, Matt Deitch is up north fishing in Alexandria. Today we've got a special guest on, Stuart Anderson. I met Stuart through my neighbor Jeremy Kay. He's interested in the podcast, so I thought, hey, if Matt's gone, I'm going to have him on. Welcome to the show, Stu.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, if it wasn't for Jeremy Kay, I wouldn't be here. So
yeah.
Shout out to Jeremy Kay.
Well, me too. You know, Jeremy, he's an all-around good guy. He keeps me out of trouble. He's a good guy to have around.
Yeah, I love Jeremy.
But no, so Stu, maybe we'll call you Stu, maybe we'll call you Stuart, Stu the Noob. I don't know where we're going to go with it.
Something like that. Yeah.
But we've got all show to figure it out. But Stu, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I grew up in Platte, South Dakota along Lake Francis Case in the Missouri River. And I fished growing up, and then kind of got out of fishing for a while. Wasn't my passion at the time. I did a lot of other things, a lot of sports, and just pretty much anything. I'm interested in a lot of different things. Then I went to college at South Dakota State University, and then I got a job here in Rock Rapids, Iowa, as an electrical engineer. Do consulting for electrical power, substations, transmission distribution, etc. And yeah, so now I live in Rock Rapids.
You can't figure out
kids, so yeah.
You can't figure out what to do with yourself being out of South Dakota, away from the river.
Yeah, right. No, yeah, you kind of have. I always have some regrets, like I didn't take advantage of it enough when I was younger, and now I'm trying to get more and more involved in fishing, and I think it's a great way to spend some time with my kids, and yeah, just something I can grow old doing. Yeah,
absolutely. It gets them off. It gets kids off the electronics, and that's one of the coolest things about fishing. You can do this for the rest of your life. If you're 75 years old, and as long as your hips are still good, I mean, you can get into a boat. You can go sit along a river or a lake somewhere. This isn't just a young man's game. This isn't just an old man's game. This is an everyone's game, and that's one of the coolest parts about fishing, I believe.
Yeah, that's exactly. I love fishing. I always have. I've always loved the outdoors. I just want what can I do with my kids when I get old? What's going to keep them coming back to their dad and loving their dad, beyond, high school, And so I was like, well, I can golf, which I like golf, but hunt, fish, dad goes pay for a fishing trip, the kids will be there.
Absolutely. So. Absolutely. Don't forget about me someday when you got this fishing trip lined up.
Yeah, right. No, you said you want to go to northern Minnesota, and so do I. So we should go Lake of the Woods. Let's get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, we got a really cool episode for you. We actually, down here in the studio, if you want to call it that, we got a cool new deal set up to do phone interviews. So instead of me and Matt heading out and meeting these anglers wherever they're at, what we'll actually get to do from now on is we're just going to give them a phone call, and I'm hoping we got everything set up right here. I believe we do. And we've got a really cool episode with Craig Oyler from out in Rapid City, South Dakota. Craig is a Clam Ice Team pro, the founder of Hooked on Hardwater out there in Rapid City, which is a deal where he gets 60 underprivileged youth, pairs them up with 60 professional ice fishermen, and we'll use that term loosely because I'm actually one of them guys.
Oh, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
No. You don't give yourself enough credit.
No, well,
Matt for sure is, but you think you right above the bar.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, when I got out there, it was a pretty humbling experience being out on the ice with all those great sticks, and no, it was a lot of fun. But yeah, we'll save that for Craig, and yeah, we'll give him a call and see if we can get him on the phone.
Should be a great interview.
You bet. Craig, you there, man?
I am. How are you?
Doing great.
Good. Craig, never get skunked or never lose a fish?
Me personally, I would want to never get skunked. And
Me
I know
too.
I'm going against you, Sturman, but I think losing a fish is what drives us to go back and try it again. I mean, I've got several fish that I've lost, and they'll haunt me till the day I die, I'm sure. But, every time I'm out there fishing, I feel like maybe I'm going to catch that fish again, or hook into it again anyway. Maybe not necessarily catch it.
So you wouldn't take a couple days getting skunked to go back out there and catch one of those fish that got off?
I don't think I would. I don't like coming home skunked. That's hard to tell my wife I didn't catch any fish today. That's a tough one to swallow there.
Yeah, like I tell Scott, nothing worse than me taking my kids fishing and not catching a single thing. And then they're like, Dad, they look at me like, what did we do?
Yeah.
Well, why are we at the lake throwing this line in the water with this worm on it? You know?
No, I definitely get it. I do. But I don't know. Maybe it's just because the tournament bass fishing is still kind of fresh in my mind right now. But I've had a couple get off, and I don't know. I still think what I think, but whatever. But Craig,
I won't hold that against you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But no, Craig, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into fishing.
Well, I growing up in the Black Hills of South Dakota, Scott, you've been here. It's an outdoorsman's paradise. I mean, there's truly just a little bit of everything to do. And so my dad, he was it still is a very avid outdoorsman. And so by the age of 3, he had me out on the ice fishing for rainbow trout up on Deerfield. And he's I don't remember that trip or anything like that. And I mean, we were out a lot, but he said right away he knew that I was into it. And I just have always had a passion for catching fish. I don't know why. I mean, my senior pictures, I even have my fishing vest and fishing rod in my hand, so.
Fly fishing pole?
Definitely not a fly fishing pole.
I just had to throw it in there. I had to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but we have a lot of opportunity, and it's kind of funny. People don't look at the Black Hills as a destination for fishing because we don't have a ton of water. Kind of an interesting fact about South Dakota, if you go west of the Missouri River, there are no natural lakes. Everything is a reservoir, and so people just don't think this is a destination, but we do actually have some really good fishing. So I've just spent a lot of time chasing the fish over the years, and I've even tried moving away from the Black Hills, but I always come back. So that's kind of a long answer to you, but I just have been around it my whole life, and I just have always enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I remember one time at the Ice Institute up in Sioux Falls, you were doing a seminar, and you said if you take all the water in the Black Hills and combine it, it's still not as big as Lake Madison over here on the east side of South Dakota.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I mean, we don't have a lot of surface area, but what we make up for it is depth.
Absolutely.
3 of our lakes can touch 100 feet deep, so that helps. But yeah, luckily we don't have a huge population, so the lakes don't get overly crowded. I mean, there are definitely busy days with the pleasure boaters and the fishermen on some of the lakes, but it like I say, not a lot of water, but the fishing's really good in them, and we have a lot of opportunity.
So how's the fishing out there right now?
I'm a diehard lake trout fisherman, and our lake trout bite is actually pretty tough, only because the amount of moisture we've had. I mean, this has just been an unprecedented weather year for us, and Pactola, which is our main lake trout lake, it got flooded about a month and a half ago. To where the boat ramps were underwater, so you couldn't even put a boat on. And about 2 weeks ago, they opened the ramps back up, and then we got a couple more huge rain storms, and so now the ramps are closed again. So when they did have the ramps open, though, we got out there, we started fishing for them, and I tell you, the lake trout are just scattered right now. So I think the amount of water flowing out of the lake and the water flowing in, it's just, it's pretty turbulent in there right now, and I think the fish are pretty confused and don't know what they're doing. Either that or I'm really confused and don't know what I'm doing. But all I know is, to answer your first question, I did get skunked when it came to the lake trout. So maybe I would have taken...
You caught some rainbows?
Oh, yeah, we caught a lot of rainbows.
That's good for you.
And, yeah, I suppose so, huh?
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was... pretty interesting. So, honestly, I've become a lot, I don't want to say better, but I've been doing a lot more walleye fishing lately just because, if I can't chase a lake trout, I do like catching walleyes. So we've been spending a lot of time doing that.
Are you up on Angostura there?
Angostura and Ormond.
Okay.
Ormond is the one north of Rapid City up by Belfouche, and then Angostura is south by Hot Springs. And, both are about an hour's drive away, and both are phenomenal walleye fisheries. We're having 40, 50 fish days, so that's a lot of fun.
Oh, wow.
And you've caught, was it 1 or 2 tagged walleyes on one of them this year?
2. I actually one at Angostura and one at Ormond.
Have you gotten any information back on those?
I have. They I wish I'd have been prepared. I can't remember. They were tagged just this year though, so they haven't been in the system very long. It's kind of funny where they put them in at. These are both lakes are, well, Angostura is like 5,000 acres and Ormond's about 8,000, and the one on Ormond where I caught it to where they put it in at, it was all the way across the other side of the lake. So, it's kind of just funny how much those fish wander, and makes you realize why it's so hard to catch them.
Yeah, very cool. And you released both of them, so another angler down the road's gonna get a prize yet too.
Yeah, I didn't realize it, but I guess it's legal to take the tags off. They open up and you can take them off, so I could have kept them, and I probably would have kept at least one of them just to, have some jewelry for the boat keychain or something, but I guess I'll just have to go out and try and catch another one now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been a good walleye bite. We're doing a lot of live bait, and one thing that I'm starting to get or trying to get better at is pulling crankbaits. I just haven't spent a lot of time doing that, and I went and fished with Dan Hogue, that celebrity walleye tournament you talked about a couple weeks ago, and we did nothing but pull crankbaits, and so it kind of got a crash course on that, and I'm getting a little better at it and getting some more confidence in it, which I'm looking forward to figuring more of that out anyway, and a whole new aspect of catching fish for me.
Yeah, absolutely. If the conditions were right, how would you be targeting Lakers right now out on Pactola in the summertime?
Well, so with the warmer temperature, those fish are going to be pushed down a little bit deeper. They like cold water. They're always seeking out the coldest water in the lake, and so they're going to be. A person's probably going to be fishing 60 foot of water or deeper. And for me, I'm fortunate enough with Clam and Ice Team. I've been able to, I use the Jason Mitchell Elite Series rods, which are really good for vertical jigging, and so with the drop TG that Clam makes, it's a 3/8 ounce jig, but it's a smaller size, and so you can fish that deeper water pretty effectively, but it's still a smaller profile, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And anyway, and we're tipping those with the Craigies. I'm so embarrassed by that name.
Come on.
Seriously, I am. I shouldn't say embarrassed. I'm embarrassed but humbled at the same time. It's kind of a pretty cool honor to have a bait named after me, but I guess we can jump into what that is. If you're familiar with Scott Brower of Mackey Plastics, him and I were fishing together about 4 years ago, and I was just picking his brain because he's one of the smartest guys you'll ever meet. He knows bugs and insects more than any normal human being should. And I was just trying to pick his brain, like different ways I could target these lake trout. And we were talking about like what their forage base is in Pactola, and I told him, rainbow smelt and rainbow trout and bluegills and mysis shrimp. And he looked at me and goes, mysis shrimp, what is that? And it's really small bug, I guess. I don't. It looks like a shrimp, but it's almost too small to even be a shrimp. But lake trout seek those things out because there's just a ton of nutritional value in them. And so we were talking about it, and I was pulling up pictures on Google showing him, and I could tell he was intrigued. And I was like, "Hey, you should make a bait like that." And about 2 months later, he sends me a care package with these baits, and he's like, all right, what do you think of these? And, we changed some things here and there, and it was probably about a 7 or 8 month process, and finally we agreed on what it needed to look like, and And so we made 2 different sizes, smaller ones for the panfish and bigger ones for the predator fish. And I tell you what, ever since we've started using that, I have truly only ever fished lake trout with the drop jigs and the Craigies or the leech flutter spoon from Clam. Those are the only 2 baits I've used on Lakers. And, you know, I'm sure you've heard me talk about how important confidence is when you're out fishing, and I am never more confident than I am when I'm using those for chasing lake trout anyway. So kind of a cool bait, and a pretty cool honor to have a bait, you know, named after me. But it just sounds silly when I tell people about it, though.
Yeah, I think when you know, a young person's getting into fishing and, you know, they want to be a bass tour guy or whatever, you know, I think it's always a basketball player wants to have their own shoe named after him. I suppose a fisherman wants a rod or a bait named after him, and you got it, and that's just awesome. Tell us.
Now, I can't remember, did you fish with that at all when you were out? Were you jigging, or how? Because you'd caught a lake trout last winter. What did you catch that on?
Absolutely. I caught it on your exact recipe. Scott McInthune gave me a clam jig, and I had it on a Craigi. I think it was the rainbow clam jig, and I think it was a chartreuse Craigi XL. And yeah, that's what I caught my only Laker I've ever caught off of. And I got to say, if I'm going to go after Lakers, it'd probably be my confidence bait too. And you know, if that's the only thing I've ever used, when I was catching the fun fish, the rainbows, I was using the leech flutter spoon too.
Yep.
So you mentioned the Craigi XL. Is there a difference between the Craigi and the Craigi XL?
Yeah, so the Craigi XL is just the bigger version of it. The Craigi, the original Craigi is just a smaller. It's probably only 3/4 to an inch long, where the Craigi XL is about 3 inches long.
Oh, okay.
Now, did you have any hand in, like, actually going out there to New York with Scott Brower and full on designing it? Like, Scott's a mold maker by trade, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So no, I didn't have any part of that at all. The initial stages were he would make a mold and just send me a picture of what the mold looked like, and you know, I just you told him like these legs seemed a little too long and that tail needed to sweep out a little bit more, stuff like that. And like I say, it's not his full-time gig, so you know, it was probably a week or 2 between pictures, but you know, we just kind of talked back and forth, and like I say, before he mass produced a bunch of them, there was a lot of just back and forth trying to make sure we had it right, because it's one of those things, you know, I as much as I wanted to have a bait that I helped have my hand in designing, I wanted to make sure it was going to be effective too.
Yep. And you actually waited just until, was it last winter, to unveil the Craigi XL?
Yeah, that's very true. I kind of forgot about that. So we fished with it for we fished with it solid for 2 winters, and I shouldn't say 2 winters, 2 years, but we used it more in the wintertime. And it was one of those, Dan Hogue at ColdSnap Outdoors, he approached us just saying, hey, I'd like to market these because it is such an effective bait, because, you know, everyone in the inner circle was using those baits and having a lot of success. And I'll be honest, it was really tough for me to okay that, only because I knew that, you know, my secret weapon was getting handed out to the world now, which, you know, at the end of the day, really isn't that big of a deal. It just felt good knowing I kind of had an upper hand on a lot of people, though. But I will say the opposite side of that. It's amazing to get pictures from people. We're actually working on a slideshow of all the people with their personal best lake trout that have been caught on Craigi.
Really?
And it's going to actually be I mean, Scott, your picture is going to be on there too.
Heck yeah.
So, you know, I mean, it's just, I want to say there's like 20 to 25 fish that people have caught that is their new personal best, you know. So, I mean, that's a pretty awesome
in 1 year
deal. And you know, I even had a guy out of the boat this summer that he caught his personal best at 20 pounds on one, and 10 minutes later he caught like a 23-pounder. So, it's just been pretty cool ride, that's for sure.
Yeah. Before we go any farther on this, Craig, with the lake trout fishing, what is your goal, I guess, with the lake trout fishing? Are you always trying to beat your own personal record, or are you going for the state record? I mean, what drives you to go out there on the bitter cold days and keep hammering it out?
I have a lot of different answers for that. The one thing I would say that drives me is that fight. When I'm fighting a lake trout, it's such an impressive amount of power that those fish can possess. And I've always used the term they have a parking brake, because there are times when you hook into a bigger fish, and I'm talking like a 15-pound or bigger fish, where they're not swimming away, but you can't pull them up. I mean, they're just sitting there, and I don't know how a fish can hold still in water, but they can. And it's like you're playing tug of war with them, and you just have to wait for them to give up a little bit, and you just start gaining on them. And I mean, that fight, I have goosebumps on the back of my neck just talking about it. I mean, I love fighting those fish. And I've kind of changed my tactics. I mean, I've downsized my rods. I'm using 6-pound fluorocarbon. I'm trying to make it as hard on me as I possibly can, just to get as much out of that fight as I can. And so that's one of the answers to it. But then I love teaching people how to catch them. It is such a unique fish, and there's not a lot of places you can go and catch them. And when people come out here and they want to catch that lake trout, I love getting that phone call or that picture, or being with them when they say, I got my first lake trout. I mean, that's a pretty special feeling. So that's another one of your answers. But then the last one is, for me, to the drive, is with the education, is promoting the catch and release of them too. I mean, because they are such a special fish. And I caught a fish this winter that is probably one of the original fish from the original stocking in 1978. So that's how old that fish is.
Was that stocking accidental?
Well, not necessarily accidental, but it was unintentional, if that makes sense. They were hauling those Lakers to Oahe, and I think they were coming from Montana, and the aerator on their pickup broke down. And they said all these fish are going to die, and so they made a bunch of phone calls, and they said, hey, you're close to Pactola, just take them over there.
That's awesome.
Wow.
And they truly went unnoticed for a lot of years. They didn't even know if the fish were reproducing, because no one was fishing for them. And it was in the summer of 1999, I'd went to Canada and caught a lake trout, and I thought, holy cow, that's a lot of fun. And I knew our state record lake trout, which was only like 12 pounds at the time, came out of Pactola. So I thought, well, if there's Lakers in there, I think I know how to catch them now. So I just started fishing for them. And my very first time out on Pactola, we caught a 5-pounder, and then my dad lost one that broke 20-pound fire line. So
really,
so that was that drive. We didn't get that fish, but now I knew there was some big fish in there. And so from that point on, I just started spending every waking moment I had and doing as much research as I could. And I was calling guides up in Canada, asking for information on them, and yeah, so it's been a really healthy fishery ever since then. That's for sure.
But now the way you target lake trout out there is not the same way that they really target the lake trout up in Canada, is it? I mean, they're a lot different, correct? Or am I wrong?
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of it's the forage base. The Canadian lakes, they have the ciscos and whitefish and a lot bigger bait fish in the system. And so they're using bigger baits, the big tube jigs. And I struggled for a lot of years trying to get my lake trout to eat like a Canadian lake trout does. And And it wasn't until a guy came out and he caught and broke the state record 3 times in one summer, and I'd seen him out on the water, and he was fishing in the dumbest places I'd ever seen, and like, there's no lake trout over there, and I quickly realized that my lake trout weren't Canadian, so we just totally reevaluated everything we were doing and went back to the drawing board and started fishing for South Dakota lake trout.
What's the biggest one you've taken out of Pectola?
Just last winter, I caught one that we figure was in that 28 to 29 pound range.
Wow.
And the state record is 30. And that was one thing I was going to touch on too. You asked if I was driven to catch a state record, and honestly, that has no effect on me at all. I wouldn't kill that fish to get a state record anyway. So
right, and that's why you say you figure it was at 28. You didn't weigh it. You caught it, and as quickly as you can, you get it back down the hole. You're not bringing it into Rapid to weigh it at the rooster. Or...
Yep, and even hanging the fish by their trying to weigh it, hanging it by their jaw. When they get that big, their innards can get dislocated a little bit, and you could end up killing the fish anyway. And it's just not worth it to me. So, I mean, they have pretty good fish calculators online. So you get this broad spectrum. You take the length and then the girth, and it gives you a pretty good estimate. And so that fish, I don't remember the stats right now, but yeah, it went in that 28 to 29 pound range.
On the Craigi XL?
On the Craigi XL.
Nice. Now, you're also using Craigi XLs when you're ice fishing, too. Yeah, like you say, you caught it on the Craigi XL, but we were talking about doing Craigi XL's open water, but that's still your primary winter bait also.
Yep, for the lake trout. And, I got on a walleye bite early ice last year where we were catching them with the Craigi XLs also.
Yep.
They are a good predator bait. I would like to try and fish more for the walleyes in the northern and just see how it does, but I have such a hard time not fishing for lake trout that I don't get that done. So I'm going to have to rely on you to go do that for me.
Yeah. Now, if somebody's listening, how do they get their hands on a Craigi or a Craigi XL?
ColdSnap Outdoors is the place to go. ColdSnapOutdoors.com. He's the exclusive online dealer for the Craigi XL. The Craigis, I think you can get in a few of the stores, but for the XL, it's just pretty much through ColdSnap Outdoors, or the Rooster is carrying them in Rapid City, the Rooster Bait and Tackle.
Absolutely.
Those are the only places you can get them.
Yep. Well, speaking of ice fishing, and it's the middle of July, I don't think it's too early to start talking about it. But let's talk a little bit about Hooked on Hardwater. Tell the listeners who don't know what Hooked on Hardwater. Tell them what it is, how you came up with the idea.
Well, I affectionately call Hooked on Hardwater my third child. It consumes about as much time as my children do, and what it is my dad has been with the Rapid City Club for Boys for 54 years, I think he's going on now. And so with him being there for that long, I grew up in the Club for Boys, and I spent time with all those boys. And, it's essentially what like a Boys and Girls Club is now, but ours is still just for boys only. But I grew up in there, and it's one of the busiest ones in the nation. Like right now in the summer, they're seeing 400 to 450 kids a day come through.
Really?
Yeah, it's
awesome.
Absolutely insane. And Scott, you've been there, so you've seen. I mean, it's organized chaos.
Oh,
but
it's crazy.
It's just such an awesome facility, and the energy that facility holds is just amazing. But there's a lot of underprivileged children that go there, and there's a lot of kids that they don't get to experience the things that are second nature to a lot of us. And here, well, I guess we're planning our 7th annual Hooked on Hardwater now. So 7 years ago, I went to them and said, I want to combine my two loves, which is the Rapid City Club for Boys and ice fishing. How can we do it? And so we started brainstorming, and we came up with a system where I bring in 60 professional ice fishermen from throughout the ice belt. I mean, we literally have them from coast to coast, and I think we've had as many as 14 states in Canada represented. And you know, I mean, these are just all leaders in the industry of ice fishing, and they.
Scott Sturman.
Everyone besides Scott.
No. See, and I'll disagree with you all day long about that, Scott. You are a leader in the industry, my man. So,
Midwest Angler Podcast.
But with that, these pros, they each get a boy from the club, and they meet them Friday night. They get to see the facility, eat dinner with them, play dodgeball with them, and then Saturday they get to go fishing. And I mean, it truly is probably one of the most unexplainable moments for me, because I don't even know how you can put into words like what all goes on out there. I mean, the camaraderie that is formed not only amongst the boys and the pros, but just everybody. I mean, you know, there's one purpose in mind, and that is truly to make sure that those boys can walk away with a memory that no one can take from them. And, you know, they all have a smile on their face and a belly full of food. And, I mean, it's just a really, really cool experience. I don't know. I probably am a little too passionate about it, but I think that's what drives me to keep going.
Well, you know, you get 60 guys to, you know, like you said, travel across the country every single year. I think everybody else is just as passionate about it too. I mean, obviously, no one else is in the meetings, and no one else has the headaches leading up to it. We just get to show up and you know, hang out as a bunch of anglers together out in a beautiful place, meet these young boys, go out and fish. We're the ones that get to have fun with it, but I think everybody loves it. Maybe not just as much as you, but everyone does love it. It's a great thing to be a part of.
Yeah, when I heard Scott talk about it on the previous podcast, I thought that's really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's neat. You know, like, so right now we're in the planning stages. Ashley just came off a meeting last week about it, and we're meeting about every other week with it. We've got a lot of new things we're going to try this year, because along with the event and you know, making sure that the boys get a great experience, we do take the opportunity to try and raise funds for the Club for Boys. And when I set all that up, I just said, you know, I'm totally good with helping do a fundraiser, but I don't want to pay the light bill. I want to make sure that we continue outdoor education, whether it's hiking, hunting, camping, whatever it is. I just want to make sure that the Club for Boys always has a program to get the boys outside, because in my mind, this day and age, that experience outside is the one that they're going to remember the most. I mean, they're all going to be at home playing Fortnite at night, but they're not going to remember that 10 years from now. But they will remember catching that first fish or going on that hiking trip or whatever it may have been. So
yeah, that's so true.
So with this year, we're trying to up the stakes. We've been experimenting, trying to figure out the best way to go about it, but we definitely are going back to our roots with a big fundraising banquet where we're going to have live and silent auctions and stories from the pros and everything. But we're in the works. I can't talk about them yet, but we got some really big things we're working on that might take it to the next level too, which should be a lot of fun for everyone.
When is Hooked on Hardwater this year?
Oh man, I knew you were going to ask me that.
Well, it's in February.
I think it's February 22nd is the date, but I'm not 100% sure.
Now,
I'm actually looking at my phone right now. Yep, February 22nd.
Okay. Now, if somebody who's listening to the podcast right now, it's open to the public if you buy tickets in advance, correct?
Correct. Yep, it'll be in Rapid City. We've got a new venue we're going to be at, which is going to be, it seems like it's going to work out really good. And Scott, you'll be happy to hear what we're going to be eating for dinner that night.
Oh, yeah.
Wait for it. Jay Steele's Barbecue. If last year we had Jay bring up his barbecue truck and he cooked for a little tournament we had amongst the pros and sponsors, and I'm telling you, Scott, that's probably the best barbecue I've ever
eaten.
Oh,
it was good. Those little chicken lollipops, those lollipop drummies. Oh, baby. Those were good.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and you know, it's kind of like releasing the Craigi XL to the public. I'm not sure I want to release Jay's Barbecue to the public.
We'll
but
never
we're
be able to
do
get
it
him
anyway
back.
for the better of the event.
Yep. No,
So-
that's excellent. I'm pumped up about that.
Yeah. When I tell you what, that Jay Steele, he is just a salt of the earth guy. I called him and I was real sheepish about it because I was like, hey, what do you think about last year he cooked for 100 people. I said, what do you think about doing 350 to 400 people? And he said, oh, geez, I thought you were going to make it a lot of people. This is nothing. So it's like, okay.
Yeah. Well,
So-
perfect. Now, if somebody's listening and they want to find out more information about Hooked on Hardwater or the Club for Boys, is Facebook the best way to check that out?
Yep, the Rapid City Club for Boys Hooked on Hardwater. It's
Okay.
kind of a long name, but that's the best way to get any information. That's the Facebook page.
Yep.
Is
And I
Rapid City Club for Boys.
And I can tag that in the Facebook post tomorrow or whenever. When
Sure.
Yep, I can tag that, and so I will. But
Yep, and you know, one thing that I think is a pretty important aspect of it that we are going to continue is to sponsor a boy, and that's something that, you know, you don't have to be someone local. If you can't make it to the banquet, if you're in another state, whatever it is, you can sponsor a boy and still be a part of it. And that for $100, you can ensure that boy has the proper gloves, boots, coat, hat, you know, everything he needs to make sure he's warm on the ice. And if he doesn't have that stuff at home, he gets to take it all home with him. And it's a really good program because we had a lot of years where it wouldn't matter how many times we'd send home permission slips or notes with the boys, they would show up with tennis shoes to go out ice fishing. And
that doesn't work.
You know, I tell you what, for me, as soon as my feet are cold, I'm done.
Oh, absolutely.
Ice fishing is no longer fun if my feet are cold.
Yep. Yeah, and
And-
I think it's just something that, you know, even in our community here where me and Stuart live, I think it's just that we take it for granted that all young kids have proper snow coats and snow pants and boots. And, you know, I don't want to knock Rapid City, but, you know, you get out there and it's not that way. You know, there's a lot of them young kids that do not have the proper equipment. And, you know, you're living there basically in the mountains, in the, you know, where you get plenty of snow.
Yeah, and, you know, the sad reality is a lot of these kids, that trip up to the lake is probably their first time leaving this Rapid City limits.
Yep.
You know, so even though we live in the mountains, they aren't experiencing the mountains. And it's just, you know, so that's probably why they're not as prepared as they should be. But,
Yep.
and you know, hopefully with any luck, they're learning what else they can do, and they might not all become diehard ice fishermen, but, you know, at least they'll be able to look back on that memory and say, hey, I got to do that once, or maybe they will lead into it. You know, I ran into a guy, this was several years ago, but he was an old boys club boy, and he talked about how those trips changed his life, and now he's married and has kids, and he goes every weekend. We are in the outdoors. We're up in the hills, whether it's hunting, fishing, camping, whatever it is, that's where we go. And he said, my life is better because of what the boys club taught me, you know, and how to experience the outdoors. So it's pretty cool, and that just shows how important it really is.
Very cool. Very
That's
cool
awesome.
to be a part of that. But no, well, Craig, we really appreciate you dropping by and sitting, well, not sitting down. I don't know what you're doing, but I appreciate you taking the phone call and being on the podcast with us. Hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my honor. Stuart, it's good to meet with you and talk with you, too.
Yep, same. Yep.
So, all right. Thanks a lot, Craig.
All right, thanks, guys. See you later.
See ya.
Yep.
There he goes, Craig Oyler. Yeah, we want to thank Craig for dropping by and sitting down and chatting with us. That was a great interview. I hope you guys enjoyed talking lake trout. Hope you guys enjoyed talking hooked on hardwater. Stuart, thanks for joining me tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was my pleasure.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it also. Matt's still going to be gone next week, so hint, hint, if you've got an open night next week, maybe we'll get together and record episode 33.
I'll do my best. Yep.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week.
Yep, pick up some Craigies.
You bet. See ya.